co-host, tell me only the good things that come to your mind about your mother.
I had neither. So, yeah. What, any other questions? Yeah, the same answer. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be.
So, can I leave?
It's going to be seen out of Blade Runner. We're just going to shoot you under the table.
That's what I was opening the door for, but apparently co-host hasn't seen Blade Runner in a long time.
I have seen Blade Runner. I was just never trying to come up with a joke from that scene. Sorry.
What about my mother?
All right, so the reason I was bringing this up is because, like, when I think of therapy, Blade Runner comes to mind, and this
That's
is
sad. You need to go into therapy.
I know. You need to. Yeah, there's plenty of other movies to watch besides that. Even though it's a great film.
In spill terms, I'm probably considered to be relatively well balanced for that compared to people who go start quoting Silence of the Lambs or something. But no, we're talking about A Dangerous Method, which is the new David Cronenberg film that is once again strayed far away from the Cronenberg we used to know back in the day. Of
What
horror.
happened to that Cronenberg who made cool movies?
Who used to make
What do you
crazy
mean?
horror films?
He just made Splice, right?
No.
That just.
No, yeah, I know.
Oh, damn it.
No, that was the old Cronenberg who made Splice.
Okay.
That was the ghost of a cold Cronenberg or something. I still can't believe that's like, it feels like that's a pseudonym he's working under.
I know, right?
It's too much like him to not be.
I want to see him and force him to sign a copy of the Blu-ray of Splice.
Oh, dude, that would be awesome. Watch him just blow a gasket.
You have to sign this. This is like your greatest film.
Yeah, I know. It's like one of the best movies you've made.
Yeah, the best movie you made in the last 30 years.
It's like that great picture is going around on the net where the guy's handing out the picture of Heath Ledger to Jack Nicholson for him to sign. But no, this is Cronenberg's latest bent, which is more serious drama stuff. And this is even, considering that he's been doing stuff that's still pretty violent, this is really, really far away from that.
It's way far. Yeah.
It's a historical film.
It's the Freddy versus Jason of old psychiatrists with Carl Jung versus Sigmund Freud. Am I correct in
is
that?
this if they were going to put ads in Fangoria for this movie?
Yeah.
This is how you would sell it?
Yeah, sure. It's
like
Cronenberg.
Freddy versus Jason of classic era psychologists.
I couldn't even dream that. Yeah. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's set in before World War I. And it's based on, your primary character is Carl Jung, who's played by Michael Fassbender, who apparently was in absolutely everything this year.
I know, right?
I don't know why he and Jessica Chastain don't just get married. Gee, the two of them, they were in every film that came out. But he's just kind of coming out as like his own man in therapy, like writing papers that people are listening to. He's like just starting to be his own voice. Meanwhile, he doesn't even really know him except as having read his stuff and taking classes from him. But Sigmund Freud, played by Viggo Mortensen, on a totally different place in the beginning, is considered to be the father of modern therapy at this time. And so Jung is starting out with some crazy new ideas about actual therapy, sitting down and talking with patients instead of just locking them in the room and shocking them with things. And
I'm just laughing because Viggo Mortensen, he's always like this big, strapping, handsome, leading man, hero type. He's Strider. He's the naked spy from Eastern Promises, and now he's Sigmund Freud. Like, if every image of Sigmund Freud has never struck me as being that kind of guy.
Yeah, it's an odd choice. The thing about Viggo is he got a late start in all this. So, I mean, he's already has gray hair. I think he just dyes it.
Yeah.
So,
well, the thing is that you never think of him as the first choice for Sigmund Freud. I mean,
no, except that Cronenberg obviously loves working with him since he's been the star of his last 3 movies.
And you can tell because he does a great job. He does a great job just sitting there and pretending to be Sigmund Freud.
It is. Tell me more about your mother.
It is kind of like an impression more than anything.
It really is.
I mean, he's good at it, but it's like, keep in mind that despite what the movies are selling this as, Freud is kind of a supporting character here.
Oh, he really is.
Yeah. The movie is really about the relationship between Carl Jung and a woman named Sabina Spirulina. Hanging out at the health food store too much. I have no idea if she's based on a real person or not, but the movie certainly makes it seem like that's plausible. She plays a female patient in the beginning of the film who is like a whack job. I mean, she's like has spastics and she's like freaking out and spitting and cussing and trying to grab people sexually. I mean, she's a freak. And it's Keira Knightley, who's a very attractive woman, but she does this thing. I don't even know what it is with her jaw and her face.
Dude, the whole time watching her, I mean, which the price of admission alone, I mean, should be just to see her performance, because it's one of those performances where you're like, holy shit, I don't know if you need an Oscar or if you need like some help with your acting, because I could not tell. The gauge kept on going back and forth to me, going like, is this like her worst acting role ever, or is this her greatest? Because she looked like she was possessed by Jim Carrey, who needed like somebody to do the Heimlich maneuver on her. Dang. Because every time she looked like she was about to, like she was choking on a bone. Because you see scenes where she's like, I don't. There's scenes like that just go on, and you're like, what in the fuck is wrong with this girl?
Well,
and who's putting her in charge of anything?
It's like her monster. You know what I mean? Like the way Charlize Theron, a beautiful woman, made herself not even mildly attractive for that. And here, it's not makeup; it's pure performance. And she's like, "Yeah, you would never. I don't care." Yeah, she could be tied down and naked.
She could be Keira Knightley, and you still wouldn't.
And the insane part about it is that this guy, what was his name again? Carl Jung. He actually like gives her a job, which I'm like, okay. That was like the one part of the movie that constantly had me scratching my head. Is like, really? You're going to let the insane person run the machines?
I feel like the biggest flaw in this movie is that we missed that whole sequence where she goes from being totally crazy to not being totally crazy. The film just jumps past it.
It really does.
Like, she's the beginning of the film, you bring in, and there's a period he's starting to treat her. You're like, this is interesting. Where is this going? How is, like, the kind of newly born, this field of, like, talking it out therapy going to help this woman from this just so far gone to being a productive member of society? But then it's like, 5 years later.
And you're like really thinking like, okay, what happened? Did I miss the 5 year later reel or something where they explain like how she's like, all of a sudden she's helping this guy out with,
and she's just finishing up her own medical school to become her own therapist. You're like, well, okay.
It just shows you, man, Carl Jung is good. He knows his shit.
Now, I'm not spoiling anything either, because this happens really early in the film. And a lot of what's going on here is just this complication, I guess, about... it's hard to remember even, because it's so... Once it gets past that point, you're like...
it really is.
The complications between the different points of view between Freud and Jung. And I find this type of thing fascinating to read about. Not real interesting to watch. At least not the way Cronenberg was doing it.
No, Cronenberg was a little too faithful to any textbooks he read, because it felt like you were reading watching people read from a textbook as they were giving out their lines. Talking about, Freud doing his crazy thing as far as, hearing him talk about his method, which the film probably would have been more interesting, because he's the one focal point where when he's on screen, you want to know more about him than this other guy who seemed to be like, your theories I understand, but hey, buddy, it all doesn't have to do with sex all the time, all right? So you need to like relax with that, I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. That relationship that those two were having was interesting, but it just didn't last, because the problem with the film for me was it was just way too jumpy. It was way too jumpy, and as soon as they were trying to find some kind of dramatic angle with it, they would completely drop it and then jump on something else, where it had opportunity after opportunity to really get you involved with these characters, because they seemed fairly interesting. But the thing is that the movie kept jumping from scene to scene and year to year, to where you're trying to play catch up. Like, okay, am I really missing something here? Because these relationships and how we're seeing them pan out right now doesn't make any sense as to what we've seen before.
Yeah, I didn't find it confusing, except in the concept of just how you tell a story, where I'm like, don't you want us to have some sort of emotional connection to these guys at all? I mean, it was like a Cliff's Notes of this period of time, just flying by. But you're right, I was laughing at Freud. It's like, never take a car trip with Freud and play punch penis. Look, a penis! Look, a penis! Look, a penis!
Well, I wonder what y'all saying. It's like reading a textbook. Maybe because Michael Fassbender has done 5 or 6 movies this year, he didn't have time to memorize his lines, so they just gave him a book to read from.
The problem's not with Fassbender. He's actually quite good in it. I mean, all the performances are really good in this. It's not like it's a bad movie. It's just not a terribly interesting movie. There are points that you're like, wow, this is really interesting, but then the moment it starts to grab you, like I said, it'll like go, okay, later.
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah,
it's,
this
it's
happens
much
much
later.
after that.
And the thing is, I found myself like reading. Like, I went to Wikipedia right after I saw the movie just to see if these characters, were real characters.
Right.
And reading the Wikipedia was 1,000 times more interesting than what this movie gave me, which I wasn't really. It also confused me. It's like, what is this movie really trying to say here with these characters?
Well, it's getting into, like I said, sex is at the core of this whole film, but not in a way that is very entertaining
Interesting.
to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, like for instance, like one of the. All right, so if you're a psychologist, obviously, it's completely you will lose your practice forever ability to practice medicine if you have sex with your patient.
Right.
And that's like a duh. Everybody knows that. These guys didn't know that then. It wasn't set in stone, right? But it was still, you people go,
Hey, I didn't know
not
that.
really cool to do that. But it was like, it's kind of, in some level, about that developing weird relationship between young, like purely sexual relationship between Young and
Sabine.
Sabine's, Keira Knightley's character. And like I said, it's weird because you just saw her like looking like one of those, like crawling around and jerking around like one of those dead space creatures, you know?
She's screaming in a padded room, "Get them off me!" And then all of a sudden, she's like running her own practice, and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, and having wanton sex.
Because that's the thing. Like, as soon as these people get into relationships, you're like, oh, "Okay, here's something to really grasp onto," because the guy's wife doesn't know about it, and you're like, "All right, maybe we'll get something out of this." No, it's immediately dropped. Like,
It's
right
funny
after.
because when I read the premise of this, I couldn't wait to see it.
Yeah, me too.
And then I went to see something else, and they showed a trailer for it, and I was like, "Wow, I don't want to see this at all." It's like everything I had hoped for. Because it's funny because when the trailer's first playing, I wasn't even connected with being that movie. I was just like, "Ugh, I don't want to see this." Until they showed the name of it, I was like, "Oh, damn! This is a movie I thought I wanted to see."
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I walked in cold, not knowing what it was about, and when I noticed it was, this is a movie at least somewhat based around Sigmund Freud and his colleagues or whatever, and it didn't do anything for me besides the acting was interesting, but I honestly felt like they just didn't know what to do with the material there. I had no idea, like, honestly, what the point of that movie was after I saw
It
it.
sounds like they should have Sherlock Holmes it up a little bit.
Give it a little action.
Yeah, give it a little action, a little steampunk, a little fast slow mo.
You know what? At about the halfway point of this film, I wouldn't have argued with you at all. I would have said, I would kill for something to blow up right now.
I was waiting for Keira Knightley to turn into a goddamn cockroach or something and start having sex with everybody, because I was like, all right, is this chicken like mutate into something? Because these faces and these odd sounds that she's making throughout the entire movie, it's crazy.
Well, you thought, like, it would be like she'd start having sex with Dr. Young, and then like spikes would start growing out of her back and just turn into species.
Yeah, she'd give birth to two livers and they'd kill each other. And,
Yeah.
And Cronenberg's like, "No, I don't do that anymore."
Yeah, you need
Sorry,
to.
you should.
I wish I could sit down with David and say, look,
There's some people when it's sad when they revisit their old material. Not you.
no, you should have never stopped.
Yeah. What was the problem? Did you read one bad comment or
You're
something?
like the best in the world at doing that kind of thing. Why would you go, yeah, this is my stop. I'm going to do dry dramas now. Because there's nobody else is doing those.
Yeah, it's like they could have slapped on they could have scotch taped somebody else's name with a piece of paper, and I would have said, all right, whatever. But knowing it's Cronenberg, I mean, and especially what he's done in the past, is he usually, there's something interesting in everything he usually does, and with this, it was like nothing interesting at all.
Yeah,
So
if he
what
wants to do period pieces, it should be Lovecraft.
Oh yeah, definitely. That makes too much sense. Dude.
Yeah.
All right, not that I can't guess, but what'd you guys give it?
Oh, really? Would you guess? I'm curious. Let's hear the guess.
I'm guessing 2 Reynolds.
Yeah, that's about right for me. I give it a high rental because it's not like it's it's not like it's a crappy movie per se. It's very carefully made. I just thought its intentions were just mistaken. He achieved what he wanted to. I just thought it's just so divorced from feeling in so many ways.
It really is completely.
And that's the really biggest problem.
Yeah, as far as like psychologists trying to understand people, I mean, they're just completely devoid of any human emotion whatsoever. Besides, Keira Knightley's quirky acting. But I mean, I was thinking about if I were to give it a rental, it would be based on some of the acting. But on the other hand, I totally forgot about this movie when I left.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, what I've read on Wikipedia, it seemed like far more interesting. That they could have done something. They could have done something a whole lot better than what they gave me. So I have to, as much as it's like, if I saw that movie again, maybe I'd think twice. But I'm going to give it some old bullshit because honestly, I mean, yeah, it was decent enough acting, but that just didn't save the movie for me. I mean, a movie about Sigmund Freud should be somewhat compelling, and it wasn't.
You're obviously in a bad mood today to bring some more bullshit.
I didn't want to, but I mean, I can't recommend this to anybody. Yeah. I really can't. I can't even tell them to rent it. I mean, unless you just want to see, Cronenberg do a boring movie. I mean, yeah, I don't know how else to put it, but yeah.
You were traumatized by the size of your father's penis.
Oh, ask me a question about a turtle.